All right, Shadow Generations Episode 3, To the ARK, just came out, and we're going to watch it together. As always, please support the official release. Go watch it on the official YouTube channel or social media or wherever they have it hosted. Before you watch it with me, if you have not watched it already, please go do so before you watch this video, and then come back here, and let's enjoy it together. We're going to go through, as always, and analyze. Before we do so, I also do want to announce that I am going to be playing Sonic X Shadow Generations live on my channel here. When it comes out, so I did get the digital deluxe edition, so it should be 3 days early, so on the 22nd. I'm hoping that we can get through the entire game that day. If not, I don't know what I want to do. Like, should I play through Sonic Generations first and then Shadow Generations? Or should I just jump? Because I feel like a lot of people are going to jump into the Shadow Generations aspect of it first. I don't know. I guess we'll play it by ear. But yeah, let's get into Shadow Generations, To the ARK, Dark Beginnings. Strike that, reverse it. Episode 3. Let's go. To the ARK. So this is the gun base. This is where the rocket is. Very...
So,
okay.
Gun funded the research that created you. And when they got you, they sealed you away for 50 years.
Yes, we know this. We have known this. I don't know why you're saying this out loud.
My point is, don't get too caught up on any vendettas tonight.
I thought he was past that.
Gun's not my enemy tonight.
But they are otherwise? Oh, it's Heavy Dog. Hello.
Just an obstacle in my way.
Okay.
I call dibs.
Again? Dude, that Omega voice is actually really, really good. Like, you could really tell it was Roger during the Tales 2, but they've done so... Like, I don't think it's a... It may not be a performance thing on Roger's part. It might just be the effects that they've added. This is... Oh. Whatever they did to make Roger sound, you know, more like John St. John's Omega, which was the original voice of Omega in Heroes. Whatever they did is fantastic. Also, there is... Jesus, there's an actual pilot on this Heavy Dog, and he's gonna die. Where did he go? Again, I really like that this shows that Shadow and Gun...
Chaos control!
Okay. Very nice. That's very movie Sonic. Except this one actually makes sense. God damn! Get out of there, homie. Get out of there, dude. Oh. Jesus Christ. Shadow. I love that Shadow was the one that saved him. It's like, oh, this stupid bastard. I have to do everything around here.
I wanted to destroy it.
So whiny.
Shadow to Rouge. I'm in position.
Copy that and initiating launch.
Again, I don't think this is necessary. Also, I love that they just have the, like, well, I think this really goes to show the intelligence of Rouge too. Like, she knows how to operate, because there's no way that this is an easy thing to do, right? Like, you have to put in the coordinates to the ARK, you have to know the launch codes. Although it did just say unauthorized launch codes. Dude, they're gonna gun down the rocket.
Hurry! You have to take out those guns!
Commander? What?
This is Commander Abraham Tower. All forces, stand down.
Is that also Roger? That's also Roger, isn't it? That's weird.
Abe! I brought that intel you requested.
Huh? Huh?
Destruction of millions in gun assets.
Sorry, but Shadow needed some help saving the world.
If that's the case, despite all that's passed between us, he saved the world from Black Doom.
Honestly, he
Should've
sounds
known
pretty
I would've
damn
killed
good.
him if he asked.
That's what I'm saying! That's literally what I said!
Mission.
You could have talked him down, Rouge.
There's only one person who could ever do that.
That's not true. You could have done it too. No, that's not
He was
true.
lost to us a long time ago.
That's literally what I said though. Like, why didn't you just ask? Dude. Oh.
Stop it.
Oh.
My life was taken from me long ago. I need to focus on the mission at hand.
I think that that's a very realistic, but also weirdly mature way to show that anxiety on Shadow's part.
Threat lurks aboard the Ark, and I must eliminate it.
Like, going on the Ark is something that is hard for him to do, considering that he knows his whole story now. Damn, it really is over, isn't it? Ah! God, it kills me how short these are. How long was that? That was... Okay, so that was longer than episode 2. That still felt really short. And that's much in the same way as... I've mentioned this before, but... Divergent... Yes. Divergence? I can never remember. The Sonic Frontiers animation with Knuckles. It's a good problem to have. I think that being short and making me want more, it's a good problem to have, but I think that it's still a problem. I think it's still a problem to have, which is that, like, I really wish that there was more to it than this, right? Because while having these animations is no doubt amazing, it's really, really cool, and you know, I can sing nothing but high praises for these animations. My issue with them is that they don't provide much. Like, there are bits and pieces of things that they provide. I think that the biggest takeaway from this episode, and I think that this one has perhaps the biggest reveal out of all of them, is what Rouge was doing at Eggman's hidden base, which is gathering intel on the Time Eater. Because again, we've been asking for a while where Gunn has been, right? Because Gunn sort of went away after 06. We didn't really hear much about them, I think, at all during the events of Unleashed. Certainly not during the events of Forces, although it was kind of later revealed through one of the, like, little lore videos that they do that Eggman took them down, basically. But they've been very absent for a while. And so this is a nice return to, like, okay, they are still around and they kind of work in the background. And when it comes to specifically what Rouge's role in the story is, which I think is pretty interesting, I don't know what tipped them off as to the Time Eater. I think that that's something else that's very interesting and I hope gets explained in the game itself. But I want to revisit that moment specifically. Or I guess we can just go through it bit by bit like we always do, and I'll talk to that when we get to it. Yeah, like I was gonna say at the beginning, I really don't get why this was necessary. This just seems... And again, I've always been someone who is of the thought process of, like, acknowledging the criticism or like preemptively being like, yeah, we know this is silly, but, you know, you can't criticize us now. Like, that's not... I still don't think that that's great storytelling, because it's just like, okay... And saying, oh, but that, you know, that's not how Shadow does. It's just like, yeah, but it could be, though. Like, I feel like he's not beyond, especially in his own game. He was very agreeable in Shadow the Hedgehog. There are a lot of routes where, like, someone will tell him, hey, we should do this, and he's just like, you know what, you're right. So I think that you can talk to Shadow. So to pretend like no one can talk to Shadow except Maria, I think is also kind of undermining his growth as a character. I think that there is significance to it in you know, but it's also not teaching us anything that we don't already know. Like, we know that he loved Maria, we know that Maria was very important to him, but to suggest that Maria is the only person Shadow would ever listen to, I think is a bit regressive to his character. Especially when he trusts Rouge and Omega so much, right? Like, we saw that in the last episode too. Like, he trusts Omega and Rouge enough to fight alongside them and to tell them, hey, straight up, I need a rocket ship. The Black Arms may be coming back. Like, he trusts them enough to tell them that, but then Rouge thinks that he won't trust them enough if Rouge was like, hey, why don't we just ask the commander? Like, again, there's this sort of narrative cognitive dissonance to me that you can't explain away by just saying that you know how Shadow is. Like, I don't know. And granted, if they did go that route, you know, it's like a lot of storytelling where you just kind of like, it would just end the animation too quickly. So I do, in a literal sense, understand why they did this. It's just that from a logical standpoint, it is a bit weaker in terms of storytelling because of that. Like, there was a way easier solution that you didn't do, and it's just a little too obvious that you could have done this instead.
Gunn funded the research that created you.
I'm also not a fan of stuff like this. Like, I feel like nobody who's playing I mean, granted, I'm sure that there are people who probably played Generations as their first Sonic game, very unfortunately so, but like, these callbacks where it's just like, hey, I'm going to explain your backstory to you, those have never made sense to me, because it's like, everybody in this room right now knows Shadow's story. This is something that we have known for a very long time. There is no need for anybody to give us the cliff notes or give us the recap. But they frame it as like, okay, what does Roosh say after the fact?
My point is, don't get too caught up on any vendetta.
Well, the reason she says that is to tell him, you know, don't get caught up on vendettas, which I feel like is also a silly statement, because at this point in their story, we know that Shadow is kind of beyond it, right? Like, we know that Shadow doesn't care anymore. And I think that especially rings true when the commander comes in and is like, hey, everybody back off, Shadow's on a mission, he's gonna do what he's gonna do. Gunn isn't after Shadow either. They know he's a good guy. They know he's an ally. So it's just like, mentioning Shadow's backstory here is kind of pointless. Mentioning why she's mentioning the backstory is also kind of pointless, because again, he's not going to, like, he's not going to exact revenge on anybody. But I think it is a good opportunity for Shadow to say, like, okay, I'm not fighting them because they're my enemy, I'm fighting them because they're in the way. Which, fair enough, I guess, but again, it's just, all of this crumbles apart when you realize you could have just asked. You could have just asked and they would have said yes.
Tonight.
Gunn is not my enemy tonight. Just an obstacle in my way.
I do love that. Again, this is another one where, like, you can really see the artistry at work. Like, I love the way that the light makes his eyes glow, and like the little smile. It's very, very nice. Ah, dude, I love it. And there's something about when Shadow smiles. Like, they have to use it very sparingly, but when they do it, I think it works very, very well. Omega second, I called dibs. A lot less funny. I don't know. It's a lot less funny the second time, I feel like. I feel like they could have given him a funnier line here. Not necessarily a funnier line, but like, I don't get why they repeated the same line. I get it, right? It's funny, but when you do it twice, like, in a row, it's not that funny anymore.
I call dibs.
I still laughed at it, but like, I kind of wish it was just a little different. It's also very silly that the gun pilot just like sees Shadow do this and he's like, oh, like he doesn't know evasive maneuvers. He just stays there like, oh, Shadow caught that. Maybe I should move? No, he just lets him do it. He moves when it's like way too late. So from what I understand, what he's doing here is Chaos Snap. That's not Chaos Control, which he doesn't... that's just a natural ability of his. He doesn't really need the Chaos Emerald for it. Maybe? This action... The thing that was top-notch in every single episode was the action. It is insane. It is so good. There is not an episode where the action is not good. I love this too. But I feel like this scene in particular, it perfectly exemplifies Shadow's character, right? Like, you think he's going to do something really, you know, I'm maybe not evil, but like very, very bad, for lack of a better term. You think that he's going to like, I don't know, punch the pilot or something? Like, no, he's opening the cockpit to eject the guy because he's just like, dude, you are going to die if you don't eject. Why are you not ejecting? Like it really speaks to his character. He's not a monster. He's past like, you know, death to humans, death to all who oppose me. It's just straight up like, dude, come on. I have to do your job for you. Get out of here, man. This was also great, I think. Boom.
I wanted to destroy it.
See, like that's a funny line, but it's just a little too wide. Like, I think that there's a degree in which you can make Omega funny, right? And I think that Omega's funniness comes not from how human he sounds, but in how human he behaves, right? I wanted to destroy it. Like there's a twinge of like whininess to it that I feel like if there was no whininess to it, it would have been funnier. That was supposed to be mine.
Shadow to Rouge.
I love these colors. I love this lighting. It's all so good. But what I was saying earlier too is like you can tell. I think that's something that's very understated in the games. Is we saw in episode 2 how great of a fighter Rouge is, and we've always known that she's a good spy. But I think that it's very understated how intelligent and how capable of a spy she is, right? Because here she is like initiating a rocket launch sequence to the ARK. I'm sure a lot of this is, I mean, you can probably find this on their database or something, right? But you still need to manually input all these things to make the rocket launch. And she's doing all of this on her own, basically. I just think that that's very cool.
Omega, hurry! You have to take out those guns!
I love that. Something else that I was going to mention here is that, like, I love that Omega's not doing anything. He's just looking at it like, what do I do? I'm standing right here. Everything is like, I don't know where things are. He doesn't really jump into action at all, even when Rouge says something. That's when the commander comes in.
This is Commander Abraham Tower. All forces, stand down.
It's so weird to hear, because, I mean, this is the first time that we're hearing a voice for the commander after the 4Kids dub, right? And it's Roger again, who is also doing Omega. And with Omega, it's very well masked because of all the filters and effects applied to his voice. But here, it's just straight up Bruce Wayne Roger. And so, like, there is a bit of whiplash, because, like, you expect him to sound a certain, and I'm not saying that the performance is bad, not at all. In fact, I like it more as it goes on. But, like, there is that, like, oh, he sounds different than what I remember. Because, like, this is the first time that we've seen him since Sonic Chronicles, and he didn't have a voice in Chronicles.
Abe! I brought that intel you requested.
So here, we see the Time Eater, right? The Time Eater in its base form, the Time Eater in its imperfect form as it's known. I wish there was anything we could extrapolate from this, because it's just like whatever graphics, you know, they're not going to include anything specific. I kind of wish there was, but I'm sure that they're going to go into detail about that. So they knew about the Time Eater beforehand, right? That must have been very shocking for Rouge for this thing to show up at Sonic's birthday party, considering she kind of knew about it. But it goes to show that, like, man, this was on their radar before the events of Generations. And I don't exactly know what that means, but that means something, right? That means that this is a knowledgeable threat. But why would they know about that? Because, like, the reason Rouge went to Eggman's base was to gather intel on something. But they had to have known there was something to gather intel on. Meaning that Eggman must have done something beforehand to tip them off about it. But how? But why? You know? Honestly, I do wonder if this at all ties into why there are the city levels in Frontiers. Because you know how, like, there are gun tanks and turrets and helicopters and stuff in cyberspace. I'm wondering if that has anything to do with this. Because here's the thing. I know a lot of people think like, oh, they're not going to include any Frontiers expansion of lore because this is about Generations. And I to an extent, I agree. I think that this is still supposed to be very Generations focused, but I think that they're going to include a couple things that are going to, again, recontextualize a little bit of things later on. I think that they purposefully designed certain aspects of Frontiers for us to be like, well, what was that about, right? That they're going to explain at a later date to an extent. You know, I think that Gunn's involvement with cyberspace, I think the thing with the ancients and their god with the Zap symbol, I think that that's going to be explained, if not in this game, elsewhere in a future game. I think that they are behind the scenes sort of laying down the groundwork for future games and for bigger things to come. So I think that this right here is very, very interesting to me because, again, that means that what happened with Eggman and the Time Eater was not a spur-of-the-moment thing. You know, obviously it couldn't have been because Eggman was recruiting classic Eggman in order for their plan to be put into action, right? But how did Gunn find out? Does Gunn know about the Time Eater? Does the Time Eater have something to do with other projects that they were working on? Did Gerald know about the Time Eater? These are all little things that when you see a frame like this, right, and you find out what intel Rouge was searching for, and that the commander, you know, Abe specifically asked for, they get your gears turning. I don't know. It's really cool. I don't know. This was a huge reveal for me. Compared to like almost anything else in the course of this animated series, this was like the big like, whoa, what? You guys knew about the Time Eater beforehand? Holy, what does that mean?
And aided in the destruction of millions in gun assets.
Sorry, but Shadow needed some help saving the world.
That's also a very stupid line when you think about it, because she doesn't know. Shadow, okay, here's my issue with that, right? And yes, again, we can go back to Rouge trust Shadow, Shadow trust Rouge, whatever. Shadow shows up to Eggman's hidden base in search of a rocket and says, I have reason to believe the Black Arms have returned. And that's it. He doesn't even explain why. I'm sure he explained why on the way over to the gun base, right? And in fact, I'm kind of not entirely sure why they didn't instead open with that, like why they didn't open with Rouge recapping why Shadow believes this, but I'm sure that he did explain like, oh, I've been having these weird thoughts lately, like is any of this for real or not? And having, you know, this premonition of like, okay, I think maybe he may not fully be dead, or the Black Arms may not fully be gone. But again, they're sort of going off of this on a gut feel, on a premonition that Shadow has and nothing more. There's no evidence for it. And Rouge just let him, like, destroy a bunch of military, you know, assets. And, like, the thing is, too, like, the commander also trusts Shadow enough to be like, okay, if you did this, you had ample reason to do it, and I believe you. But it's still, like, I had to help him save the world. It's like, okay, but you don't... It's not confirmed that they're back yet, though. Like, it could be something else entirely. And granted, maybe they know that the premonition has to do with this new thing that Rouge gathered intel on. Maybe that's the angle they're looking at this from. I don't know. But I don't know. That's a really weird line given the circumstances.
If that's the case, despite all that's passed between us, he saved the world from Black Doom. He should have known I would have supported him if he asked.
That's what I'm saying.
When has Shadow ever asked for permission?
That is an excellent question, and there has to be I'm trying to think back. I want to catch her in the lie. I want to catch her in that and be like, that's not true. You would have asked for permission here. I mean, it's not wrong, but at the same time, it's like, it's not even for permission, right? It's more so just telling him, like, I need a rocket. I'm not going to take no for an answer, Abe. I need a rocket.
You could have talked him down, Rouge.
There's only one person who could ever do that.
Again, I also don't agree with
She
this.
was lost to us a long time ago.
Stop it. That life was taken from me long ago. I need to focus on the mission at hand.
And it's funny because I feel like this is a very interesting sequence for me. Mostly because in Shadow the Hedgehog, the idea was that he had put everything behind him, right? Not that he was over Maria necessarily, but that it wasn't gonna be something that bothered him anymore. And the thing is, trauma is not that easy. Trauma is not just like, oh, I'm over it. I beat a bunch of aliens. I saved the world. I know what happened to Maria. I know who I am. I'm over it now. You know, like, I know that it's not that easy. And I think that especially because he's going back to the Ark, back to the place where, like, everything started. His birth, his self-doubt, his identity issues, where he lost his best friend, where he lost his family, where he was created to be something that he didn't ask to be, right? All of these things are enough of a reason to be anxious and to have this sort of panicky response to it, right? I think that it's very interesting how in moments like these, he only really thinks about Maria. I think it's very interesting that we don't really see much of what Shadow thinks about Gerald, right? Especially post the events of Adventure 2, where it's just like, I mean, he talked highly about Professor Gerald throughout the course of the beginning of Adventure 2's story, but we don't really hear him talk about what he thinks about Gerald after the fact. Like, there's no thoughts about him in Shadow the Hedgehog other than, like, you know, I will save the professor or I will help him out or something, but like, I don't know what his feelings or his thoughts about Professor Gerald are. And I think that that's very interesting because we, of course, know what he thinks about Maria. You know, he really misses her. She was his best friend. They were both each other's best friend. It's like his biggest regret, like not being able to save her. And again, to go back to the Ark and confront that, especially with the thought that, like, you know, the Black Arms might still be alive and they might try to force me to, or something, I don't know, right? That whole event was very traumatic for him. But I think it's also very telling too that is what causes him that traumatic pain. It's not whatever Black Doom did to him. It's not, you know, the whole thing with the Black Arms. It is the memory of Maria. And it's not even just the memory of her dying. It's her memory in general. Like, the memory of them together is what gives him that anxiety. And it's an interesting aspect to Shadow's character that I don't think they could have accurately portrayed back in the 2000s, right? I think that we're at a point in time where these characters are being a lot better fleshed out. The people portraying them are way better actors than they were allowed to be back in the day. And I think that we can have more moments like this, more emotional moments that hit a lot better because of how they're portrayed, not only from a vocal performance, but from a visual performance as well, through the medium of animation and with how much the budget has increased for Sonic games in recent years especially. And when we have things like this animation, we are able to more accurately see how it is that these characters would feel about certain situations, right? I think that we get characters who are a lot more personality driven, and I think that that's wonderful because we've always had a very base version of their personalities that we as fans go off of, but to see that in motion, I think, is something that's very special, and I think that it's what drives this moment home. Like the expression on Shadow in this moment, you know, there's never been a game where we see Shadow have an expression like this, right? I think that's something that's very special, and it's tough because, like, he's one of the coldest characters that we see on a regular basis, and to see him struggle with his emotions in this moment because of something that he doesn't even know what he's gonna face when he's up here, right? He doesn't know what he's looking for. He doesn't know what he's gonna find here. But just going back to the Ark is something that is difficult for him, for sure. And I think it's especially true because, like, well, what else do you have to, like, it's like a car ride, right? Like when you're taking a really long car ride to a vacation spot or whatever, and like you have nothing to do, you're just like left alone with your thoughts. And this kind of just rings true. Like he's just in this rocket, like there's nothing else I can think about but Maria. So it's like, I don't know. This is a very well done moment.
Stop it. That life was taken from me long ago. I need to focus on the mission at hand. A threat lurks aboard the Ark, and I must eliminate it.
I wish I could hear the lyrics for this song too, because it's played by it's performed by Casey Lee Williams, who is an amazing vocalist, and you might know her from Ruby, Without You. Actually, wait, the end credits is Throw It All Away? What? I guess I kind of hear it. But wait. Without You. Hold the phone. Because there's a song, the final boss theme for Sonic and the Black Knight is called With Me. And so Without You is like a direct contrast of that theme. And I was like, I couldn't remember who sung it. I knew it wasn't Casey Williams, but like, I think, can I find this song? I hope I can. It might not be available. I wish I know there's gonna be a standalone version of this too. And then there's a song in Frontiers called I'm With You, which is also a final boss theme, ironically enough. The reason I'm thinking, I think it's so interesting, and I want to focus more on I'm With You, the what you could consider, I guess, maybe Sage's theme for Frontiers. Although I guess Dear Father kind of is too, but this one feels a little different, right? Because, and I think that the reason this feels different is because it feels more similar to Without You from this animation. I wish there was a version of it by itself. I wish I could hear these lyrics, because I know, like, it sounds like such a good theme, right? That represents Shadow's feelings about having lost Maria. And I think that there's something about Sonic that I love a lot, because everyone talks about how good the music in Sonic games is. And I think that something people often miss is how that music often lends to the storytelling. And I think that it's very true for a song like this that specifically is talking about how, you know, now I need to do things on my own. Now I need to, you know, shine bright on my own. It's hard to keep on. Granted, this isn't verbatim what the song says, but the desire to be able to save you, to go back to a time where I could save you, right? It gives us a way to sort of predict what might happen in the story of Shadow Generations, particularly because we know that Maria and Gerald come back. So I don't know if that's something that Shadow's going to have to directly re-experience, you know, if he has to go back to that, which maybe they won't have to do, but I don't because there's a reason for this too, right? There's a reason that they're showing us exactly what it is that Maria means to Shadow, even though we know this, you know, like, as, again, to go back to what I said earlier, anybody playing Sonic X Shadow Generations most likely knows a lot about Sonic, most likely knows a lot about Shadow. So we know his story, we know his relationship with these characters, but I think that the reason for Dark Beginnings is to not only to reinforce those concepts and to show us what he thinks about these characters, but to better establish that before we get into the main campaign, so that once we're there and once we're experiencing the things that they have set for this story in particular, it hits that much harder, right? What I loved about the first episode, right? They never have to say, hey, this is Shadow's best friend, or this is Maria, this is like, they don't have to re-explain what happened, because they do so visually, right? They don't ever say Maria was killed by a gun agent when they were like there was a lot of things that were explained through context clues because they were things that we already know, which is kind of what bothers me about the beginning of this episode. And Rouge is like, yeah, I know, Gunn sealed you away for 50 years. Like, yes, we know this. We don't have to be told this. We know this. And I think that it does a better job at the beginning of this series of animations than this episode does, just in that department. And I think, again, the reason why they're showing the relationship between Shadow and Maria and how close they were, because they do it in episode 2 as well, right? They don't need to do it in episode 2, but they do it in episode 2 to reinforce two things. A, what Shadow's feelings about him being a Black Arms are. B, what Maria thinks about that in turn and how that makes Shadow feel, right? Like, I think that scene serves to exemplify exactly what it was that Maria did for Shadow that made their relationship as close as it was. And what I love about that scene, what a lot of people love about that scene, is how that transitions into him meeting up back with Team Dark, because they're now the people that he trusts. They'll never be Maria, but they're the closest thing to family and friends that he has. They're the people that he trusts. And again, I think the purpose of them showing us all this is because it's going to hit home in Shadow Generations what that loss of Maria means for Shadow and what it means for him to have to go through it again, right? Like I said, in Sonic Adventure 2, he has to confront the memory of that. In Shadow the Hedgehog, he kind of faces that again, relearning that memory, right? Because he doesn't remember this at all, but so he has to, like, basically from scratch remember everything that happened to him, and in certain cases almost relive it too through Black Doom's illusions. Here, I think in Shadow Generations, he's going to have to literally live through it again, but through a different guise, right? Like, and I don't know if it's ever going to come up, because with the Sonics, right? Classic Sonic sort of experiences his future. He's just like, okay, wow. And they never talk about it. I think that's the weird thing too. They never talk about it, about how weird everything is. They have like a little joke at the end. It's like, wow, you guys collect a lot of rings, don't you? Everything that Sonic goes through is never really touched upon by the classic characters. They're sort of just acknowledged and then ignored. With Shadow Generations going way deeper, I really do wonder what that conversation is going to look like, right? Where at least Gerald and Maria are going to be like, where are we? And it's just like, I don't know, but also, you guys shouldn't be here. You got killed. Both of you got killed by Gunn at different times. And I suspect that when I go back to my time, because I'm still alive, and boy howdy do I have things to tell you guys about what I've been up to for the last 50 years into the future. Oh yeah, I'm still alive after 50 years, by the way. I've been impressed. Like, that's the thing. I think that's what's so interesting, is that we're going to see what that's like, because this is a Shadow that has lived well beyond these characters' deaths. We don't know how much longer Gerald lived after the fact, but Maria's been gone for 50 years. And so that'll be very interesting to see. That's going to be very interesting to see what those conversations are like. And I'm sure, I feel like it's a very safe prediction for them all to acknowledge, hey, and Gerald might even be the one to tell them, like, hey, I've figured this out, and like the only way to make sure that everything goes back to normal is if the Time Eater is defeated, which means that Shadow's gonna go back to his time, we're gonna go back to our time, and that means that we're gonna die, you know? And I'm sure that he and Maria are okay with that. And I have this feeling that when it comes to them, and I don't know that this is necessarily true, because we don't know, like, Classic Sonic doesn't talk, so we don't know if he does remember the modern characters or not, or what. But my guess is once they go back to their time, they don't remember a thing, right? Because otherwise they're just letting shit play out, and that's just, I don't know. I don't know that I like storytelling like that, but that's me. I could be wrong. But I think that that's going to weigh heavily on Shadow too, right? To have this sort of, God damn it, I'm losing you again, right? Like, but in this case, he really would be, because this is really them. At least I'm pretty sure it's not an illusion. This is most likely Maria and Gerald, right, in the flesh. And so this is him having to come to terms with losing them a second time, right? There is nothing Shadow can, and he might have to grapple with that. He might have to grapple with, like, trying to figure out a way to save them, and then being like, oh, I mean, man, what if that's why they fight? I'm thinking about this, right? What if Shadow fights Sonic because he's just like, if Sonic gets this Chaos Emerald, he's going to fight the Time Eater and win, and if that happens, I lose my family again. I can't let him do that. That really just changes the dynamic of that fight, if that's the avenue they're going to go down. I don't know. But I really do think that the purpose... Obviously, the purpose of Dark Beginnings is to like lead into Shadow Generations, but I think that it also serves to show us and reinforce exactly what his relationship to Maria was like. Not just what it was, because we know, like, you can tell us, hey, they were really good friends, right? Dark Beginnings shows us what Maria meant to Shadow and really drives that point home. And I think that that's what's going to make that loss and that's, to an extent, sacrifice much more poignant in Shadow Generations than if they had just expected us to remember. Because in a way, again, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. We know these things, and so I'm glad that episodes 1 and 2 and even 3 weren't like retreading what happened to Maria. More than anything, it was showing what their relationship was like. It was showing us what Maria was like. And when they do show what happened to Maria, they do it in a symbolic way that is more tormenting to Shadow rather than a literal, like, he's re-experiencing it again. Because we don't need to see that. And I think that was a really good call on their end, to not show us that and to instead have it represented through visuals. Instead, focusing the moments with Maria on what she was like so that she can have a better relationship with us, the audience, than with Shadow, because we already know that her relationship with Shadow was a good one. There's a reason he loved her so much, but now we're the ones getting to experience it. We're the ones getting to see why it was that they loved each other. And I think that that is very important to communicate to an audience, because I feel like they haven't done that great a job up until now. I think that they had done more of a show, don't tell, or sorry, they'd done more of a tell and not show when it comes to their relationship, and here they're definitely showing, and so I really appreciate that, and it makes me very excited to hop into that first level of Shadow Generations and go down that rabbit hole, because this is going to be very exciting. I think this could be one of the best. Funnily enough, where Sonic Generations has a very nothing story, despite the fact that it's going through Sonic's history, I think that Shadow Generations is going to veer in the completely opposite direction, where it's just like, where Sonic has a nothing story, Shadow has probably one of the greatest Sonic stories in the series. And so that makes me very excited for it, because again, while I do have my problems with Dark Beginnings as a whole and in very specific moments, I think that it knows what it is it's trying to do, and it knows what its purpose is, right? Whereas I feel like Divergence for Sonic Frontiers didn't do the same thing for me. I think that it presented us with context, but it was context that we didn't exactly need, right? Or again, context that could have been included in the game and that they just made an animation for it separately. And again, I'm also glad that these episodes are going to be they're going to be included with the game. The only thing I think is really dumb is that there's extended scenes in the PlayStation version. I don't get why. And again, I might have to when it comes to me streaming this, I'm probably going to revisit those during stream, just so that I can get the full context of what it was I missed and discuss that with you guys. But that will be for another time. That will be for when we meet up in person live again, October 22nd, when this game comes out. I will see you guys then. Until next time, you guys stay safe, stay awesome. This is Char5, signing off.